Nobody saw this coming, or maybe they did, but not like this. Late last night, timelines exploded when whispers turned into headlines and fans were left refreshing their feeds in disbelief. After years of loyalty, legal battles, public vows, and picture-perfect family moments, word on the street is that Yandy Smith has quietly announced a separation from her longtime husband Mendeecees Harris, and the tea does not stop there. Because just when fans were still trying to process that bombshell, another name entered the chat, and emotions ran high. Sources close to the situation claim the split wasn't sudden, but the timing? Oh, it's suspicious. Screenshots allegedly disappeared, subtle captions were edited, family photos went missing, and then came the rumor that sent shockwaves through the fandom. Could Tamar Braxton be stepping into a role nobody expected? Fans are shocked, confused, and absolutely divided as whispers of late-night calls, friendly check-ins, and undeniable chemistry begin to surface. What really happened behind closed doors? Was this a slow-burn breakup filled with silent resentment and unspoken betrayals, or did one unexpected connection push everything over the edge? Insiders say heated arguments erupted, trust was questioned, and the family was left divided as lines were drawn and sides were chosen. Friends are allegedly scrambling to stay neutral, while fans are playing detective, dissecting every post, every like, every unfollow. And here's the real question that has everyone leaning closer to the screen. Is this just messy coincidence, or the beginning of reality TV's most jaw-dropping love triangle yet? Buckle up, because if the rumors are true, this story is only getting started. The silence was louder than any headline. For days, fans had been noticing the little things first. Yandy wasn't posting like she used to. No couple selfies, no family dinners, no cryptic quotes either, which somehow made it worse. When someone asked during a livestream why Mendeecees hadn't been around lately, Yandy paused just a second too long before smiling and changing the subject. That pause? Fans caught it immediately. Emotions ran high online as speculation exploded, because everyone knew that pause meant something was wrong. Behind the scenes, the tension had already reached a boiling point. Sources claim the argument that finally cracked everything open happened late one night, after the kids were asleep. The house was quiet, but the energy was heavy. Yandy stood in the kitchen, arms crossed, phone clenched tight in her hand. Mendeecees walked in already defensive, like he knew what was coming. She didn't yell at first. She just asked one question. Who is Tamar to you? According to insiders, the air shifted instantly. Mendeecees reportedly laughed it off, saying Tamar was just a friend, someone who checked in, someone who understood him. But that answer only made things worse. Yandy snapped back, voice shaking, saying, "Friends don't text you at 2 a.m. Friends don't delete messages." That's when things got heated. Accusations flew, voices rose, emotions ran high. The family was left divided before anyone else even knew what was happening. What made it hurt more was the history. Yandy had stood by Mendeecees through prison, public scrutiny, and endless rumors. Fans always called her loyal to a fault. So when she reportedly said, "I gave you my reputation, my peace, my everything," it wasn't just anger talking. It was exhaustion. Insiders say Mendeecees shot back that he felt controlled, unheard, and boxed in for years. That confession shocked Yandy because she believed everything she did was to protect their family. As the argument escalated, names were brought up. Past mistakes resurfaced, old wounds reopened, and then Tamar's name came up again. This time, Mendeecees didn't deny the emotional connection. He allegedly admitted that talking to Tamar made him feel seen. That one sentence changed everything. Yandy reportedly went quiet, tears streaming, before saying, "So I wasn't enough." According to sources, that moment marked the emotional separation, even if the public didn't know it yet. By morning, nothing was resolved. Mendeecees left the house. Not dramatically, not slamming doors, just quietly. But that quiet exit spoke volumes. Yandy didn't chase him. Instead, she called her inner circle. Friends arrived, and the mood was heavy. Some told her to fight for her marriage. Others told her she had already fought enough. Emotions ran high, and by the end of the day, Yandy made a decision that would change everything. The first move was subtle. She removed her wedding ring before stepping out to an event. Fans noticed immediately. Screenshots spread like wildfire. Comments flooded in asking questions she refused to answer. Then came the unfollow. Yandy unfollowed Mendeecees. Minutes later, Mendeecees unfollowed back. The internet erupted. Fans are shocked doesn't even begin to cover it. Meanwhile, Tamar was watching it all unfold from a distance. Sources claim she had no idea her name would end up in the middle of this storm, but others say she knew exactly what she was doing. People close to Tamar say she felt a deep connection with Mendeecees during long conversations about life, fame, and feeling misunderstood. She allegedly confided in friends that she never meant to break a family apart, but also admitted she couldn't control how she felt. When rumors reached Yandy that Tamar had been spotted speaking highly of Mendeecees in private circles, it reopened the wound. Yandy reportedly confronted Mendeecees again, this time over the phone. The call was short but intense. She told him she felt disrespected not just as a wife but as a woman. He replied that he never physically crossed a line, but Yandy cut him off, saying, "Emotional betrayal hurts just as bad." That line alone had fans choosing sides once it leaked. Family members began to react. Some urged them to keep things private. Others were already talking. Whispers started reaching blogs, and once blogs caught the scent, there was no stopping it. Fans dissected every old interview, every clip where Tamar and Mendeecees shared a stage, every moment that now looked suspicious in hindsight. Suddenly, harmless interactions looked loaded. Smiles looked too long. Laughter looked too intimate. As pressure mounted, Yandy finally spoke, not directly, but enough. She posted a single sentence that shook the internet: sometimes loving someone means knowing when to let go. No names, no explanations, just that. Fans are shocked, emotions ran high, and the family was left divided as the comment section turned into a war zone. Some praised her strength, others accused her of giving up too soon. What nobody realized at that moment was that this wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning. Because while fans were still processing the idea of a separation, new rumors were already forming, new alliances were shifting, and one unexpected meeting was about to take place that would push this situation from messy to completely explosive. The very next day, everything shifted again. Mendeecees didn't come home. Instead, he was spotted at a quiet studio space across town, the kind of place people go when they want privacy but also want to be seen just enough. Word traveled fast. By the time Yandy heard about it, fans were already posting blurry photos and asking the same question over and over again. Who was he meeting with, and why now? According to insiders, that meeting wasn't random. It was Tamar, not a coincidence, not a run-in. It was planned. Sources say they sat across from each other for hours, talking, venting, and slowly crossing lines that had already been blurred. Tamar reportedly told him she hated how the blogs were dragging her name, but admitted she couldn't lie about the connection. Mendeecees allegedly confessed that his marriage felt like it had been over long before the argument, and hearing himself say it out loud made it feel real. Meanwhile, Yandy was at home trying to hold herself together for the kids. She smiled, she cooked, she kept the routine going, but friends say the moment she was alone, she broke down. She replayed years in her head. Every sacrifice, every public defense, every time she chose loyalty over herself. Emotions ran high, and the pain wasn't just about Tamar. It was about feeling replaced in a story she helped build. When Yandy's closest friend asked her point blank if she thought Mendeecees was already emotionally gone, Yandy didn't answer right away. She just said, "I think he checked out a long time ago, and I was too busy holding us together to notice." That sentence spread quietly through her circle and eventually made its way to the blogs, sending fans into another frenzy. As speculation grew, Mendeecees finally spoke to someone he trusted. He admitted he felt torn. He claimed he never wanted to hurt Yandy, but also said he felt alive again talking to Tamar. That confession alone shocked people around him. They reminded him that feelings weren't harmless when vows were involved. Mendeecees reportedly responded, "I never planned this. It just happened," but for many, that wasn't enough. Tamar, on the other hand, was dealing with her own backlash. Fans flooded her mentions, accusing her of being a homewrecker, calling her disloyal, dragging her past into the present. Emotions ran high as she posted and deleted multiple messages, finally settling on one vague statement about being misunderstood and tired of always being blamed. That only made things worse. Fans are shocked turned into fans are furious. What nobody saw coming was Yandy reaching out to Tamar directly. Late one night, Yandy sent a message that was calm, controlled, and devastating. She didn't curse. She didn't threaten. She simply asked, "Did you ever think about me?" According to sources, Tamar stared at that message for a long time before responding. When she finally did, she admitted she didn't expect things to go this far, but didn't deny her feelings. That exchange reportedly ended any chance of quiet resolution. The next morning, Yandy made another move. She met with a lawyer. Not to file immediately, but to understand her options. That alone told everyone close to her how serious this had become. Friends say she wanted clarity, not revenge. She wanted to protect her kids, her brand, and her peace. Still, the word separation began circulating louder than ever. As for Mendeecees, the pressure was closing in. His family started asking questions. Some stood by him, saying marriages go through rough patches. Others were disappointed, reminding him how much Yandy stood by him when the world turned its back. The family was left divided, and that division spilled into group chats, phone calls, and tense gatherings. Then came the leak. A voice note allegedly sent by Mendeecees to a friend found its way online. In it, he admitted he didn't know if he wanted to fix the marriage anymore. He said he felt like he had already moved on emotionally. Fans are shocked barely covered the reaction. People dissected every word, every pause, every breath in that recording. Some felt it was taken out of context. Others said it confirmed everything Yandy had been feeling. Yandy heard the voice note too. Sources say she listened to it once, then turned off her phone and sat in silence. When she finally spoke, she said something that stuck with everyone in the room. "I can't compete with a fantasy." That was it. No screaming, no drama, just acceptance mixed with heartbreak. Tamar, sensing the shift, reportedly pulled back publicly but not privately. Insiders claim she told Mendeecees that she didn't want to be the reason he lost his family, but also admitted she couldn't pretend the connection wasn't real. That push and pull only made things more complicated. Every decision now felt like it came with consequences. As days passed, fans noticed Yandy glowing differently. Not happier, but calmer. She began posting motivational quotes again, talking about self-worth and boundaries. Fans read between the lines. Mendeecees, meanwhile, stayed mostly silent, fueling even more speculation. Silence, after all, can be louder than denial. Then came the dinner that changed everything. A mutual friend invited Mendeecees and Tamar to a small gathering, assuming things had cooled down. They hadn't. One too many drinks, one too many honest moments, and emotions ran high again. Someone mentioned Yandy's name, and the room went quiet. Mendeecees reportedly admitted out loud that he missed her, but didn't know if love was enough anymore. Tamar didn't respond. She just looked at him, realizing the weight of what she was stepping into. By the end of that night, rumors spread that Mendeecees and Tamar had left together. No photos, no proof, just whispers, but whispers were all it took. The blogs picked it up within hours. Headlines exploded. Fans took sides harder than ever. The family was left divided not just privately, but publicly. And just when it seemed like nothing could escalate further, Yandy received a call that stopped her cold. Someone told her exactly where Mendeecees had been seen and who he was with. She thanked them, hung up, and said quietly, "Now I know what I need to do." What that decision was, nobody knew yet. But one thing was clear. This story was far from over, and the next move would change everything. Yandy didn't sleep that night. She lay awake replaying everything, not just the recent chaos, but the entire journey. The love, the loyalty, the sacrifices that never made headlines. By morning, her decision was clear. She wasn't going to beg. She wasn't going to compete. And she definitely wasn't going to stay silent anymore. When the sun came up, she moved with purpose, packing a small bag for Mendeecees and placing it neatly by the door. No note, no explanation, just a message without words. When Mendeecees came by later that day, the energy in the house felt different. Colder, heavier. He noticed the bag immediately. "So this is it?" he asked quietly. Yandy didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. She simply said, "This is me choosing peace." That response hit him harder than any argument ever could. Emotions ran high in that moment, not because of yelling, but because of what was left unsaid. He tried to explain himself again, saying he felt lost, confused, pulled in too many directions. Yandy listened, arms folded, eyes steady. When he mentioned Tamar again, trying to frame it as something that just happened, Yandy finally snapped. "Nothing just happens," she said. "Choices were made." That sentence ended the conversation. Mendeecees picked up the bag and left, knowing something had permanently shifted. News of the separation began circulating more aggressively after that. Blogs claimed confirmation from sources close to the couple. Fans are shocked flooded comment sections again. Some blamed Tamar entirely. Others held Mendeecees accountable. A few even turned on Yandy, saying she should have fought harder. But those closest to her knew she had been fighting for years. Tamar, feeling the pressure intensify, finally addressed the situation publicly. She didn't name names, but her words were clear enough. She spoke about timing, connection, and how life doesn't always follow moral scripts. That statement poured gasoline on the fire. Fans accused her of justifying betrayal. Emotions ran high as debates broke out across social media, dividing audiences who once supported all parties involved. Behind closed doors, Tamar was struggling too. Friends say she never intended to be the villain in someone else's story. She admitted feeling torn between protecting her image and being honest about her feelings. Mendeecees, meanwhile, felt trapped between guilt and desire. Every call with Tamar felt comforting, but every thought of his kids and Yandy filled him with regret. The tension reached another level when Yandy attended a public event alone. Cameras flashed. Questions flew. She smiled, poised and calm, but when someone asked if she was single, she paused and said, "I'm focused on healing." That clip went viral instantly. Fans praised her grace. Others read heartbreak behind her eyes. The family was left divided even more as relatives reacted to the clip differently, some supportive, some uncomfortable with how public everything had become. Mendeecees watched that video too. Sources say it hit him harder than expected. Seeing Yandy stand strong without him forced him to confront the reality of his choices. He reached out to her that night, asking if they could talk again. Yandy agreed, but this time on her terms. They met in a neutral space, no cameras, no friends, just them. The conversation was raw. Mendeecees admitted he felt like he lost himself trying to live up to expectations. Yandy responded that she lost herself trying to hold everything together. When he asked if there was any chance of fixing things, Yandy didn't answer right away. She asked him one question instead. "Are you still talking to her?" The silence that followed said everything. Yandy nodded, stood up, and said, "Then you already chose." Emotions ran high, and that meeting ended with finality. Word of that final conversation leaked within days. Fans reacted with heartbreak and anger. Some begged for reconciliation. Others applauded Yandy for walking away. The narrative had fully shifted now. Yandy was no longer seen as just the loyal wife. She was seen as a woman reclaiming her power. Tamar, realizing the situation had crossed into irreversible territory, attempted to distance herself publicly from Mendeecees. But privately, the bond remained complicated. They argued too. She accused him of not being honest with himself. He accused her of pulling away when things got real. Emotions ran high between them as well, proving that what started as comfort had turned into conflict. Then came another twist. A source claimed Yandy had been seen having dinner with someone new. No photos surfaced, but the rumor alone shook the internet. Fans speculated wildly. Was she moving on already? Or was it just a friend? Yandy didn't confirm or deny anything, which only fueled the fire. Mendeecees heard the rumor and reportedly spiraled, realizing the door he assumed would always be open might be closing for good. The family fallout deepened. Some relatives stopped speaking altogether. Holidays became awkward topics. Group chats went silent. The family was left divided in ways no one anticipated. Children sensed the tension even when adults tried to hide it. Yandy focused on maintaining stability for them, refusing to let the drama consume their daily lives. As weeks passed, the separation became reality, not just rumor. Legal steps were quietly taken. Boundaries were set. Communication became minimal and strictly about the kids. Mendeecees struggled with the shift, while Yandy slowly found her footing. She leaned into work, faith, and self-reflection. Fans noticed the change, calling it growth, calling it strength. Tamar, watching from the sidelines of her own involvement, began questioning whether the connection was worth the cost. She confided in friends that she didn't want to be remembered as the woman who stepped into another woman's marriage. But by then, the damage was done. Narratives had been written, sides had been chosen, and just when everyone thought the story had reached its peak, a new rumor began circulating. Insiders claimed Mendeecees was considering making a public statement, not to defend himself but to confess everything. Emotions ran high at the thought of what he might reveal. Fans waited, divided and restless, knowing that whatever came next would either bring closure or ignite an entirely new storm. The anticipation around Mendeecees' possible statement grew heavier with every passing hour. Blogs teased it. Fans refreshed their feeds non-stop. Some hoped for accountability, others braced for excuses. Yandy, meanwhile, stayed completely offline. No quotes, no captions, no reactions. That silence made people nervous because when Yandy went quiet, it usually meant she was protecting herself from something big. When the statement finally came, it wasn't a live video or a sit-down interview. It was a long, carefully worded message posted late at night. Mendeecees admitted to emotional disloyalty. Not physical, he emphasized, but emotional. He acknowledged that lines were crossed and that Yandy didn't deserve the pain. Emotions ran high instantly. Fans are shocked flooded timelines again, arguing over whether emotional betrayal counted the same. For Yandy, it always had. What stood out most was one sentence. I didn't realize what I had until I started losing it. That line cut deep for a lot of people. Some felt it showed regret. Others felt it came far too late. Yandy reportedly read the statement once and said nothing. Those closest to her said she wasn't angry anymore. She was done. Tamar responded less than 24 hours later, and that response changed the tone again. She denied ever intending to replace anyone, but admitted she and Mendeecees shared an emotional bond that developed during vulnerable moments. She said she stepped back once she realized the damage being done. Fans didn't buy it. Emotions ran high as old clips resurfaced, showing flirtatious exchanges that now looked different in context. The family was left divided yet again, this time over whether Tamar's words sounded sincere or strategic. Behind the scenes, Mendeecees and Tamar had their own breaking point. Sources say they argued over the public fallout, blaming each other for how ugly things had become. Tamar accused him of not protecting her from the backlash. He accused her of pulling away when he needed support. What once felt like comfort now felt like pressure. Reality had set in. Yandy, on the other hand, began to flourish quietly. She took a short trip with close friends, unplugged, and focused on herself. Paparazzi photos showed her laughing, relaxed, lighter. Fans noticed immediately. Comments shifted from heartbreak to admiration. People started saying she looked free. That narrative upset Mendeecees more than the rumors ever did. When Yandy returned, she sat down with her children and explained things in an age-appropriate way. She reassured them that both parents loved them and that none of this was their fault. Those close to the family said that moment solidified her resolve. She wasn't going to allow chaos to define their future. Another twist came when a mutual acquaintance revealed that Mendeecees had asked about reconciliation again, quietly, through a third party. Yandy's response was short and clear. I forgive him, but I'm not going back. That sentence made its way to the blogs and became a headline within minutes. Fans are shocked turned into fans inspired. Many called it the most powerful move she could have made. Tamar reportedly felt that message too. Friends say she realized there was no fairy tale ending waiting on the other side of this mess. The connection she thought was special now felt heavy. She began distancing herself not just from Mendeecees but from the entire situation. Appearances were cancelled. Interviews declined. She went quiet, just like Yandy had earlier. Mendeecees found himself alone in a way he hadn't anticipated. The excitement was gone. The attention had turned into criticism. Even those who initially defended him started questioning his decisions. The family was left divided still, but the lines were clearer now. Loyalty shifted toward Yandy almost unanimously. Weeks passed, and life settled into a new normal. Co-parenting schedules were set. Boundaries respected. The drama didn't disappear, but it lost its grip. Fans still speculated, but the emotional intensity dulled. Until one final rumor reignited everything. A source claimed Mendeecees and Tamar were officially done, and that Mendeecees was struggling with regret more than ever. Some said he wanted to publicly apologize again. Others said he wanted privacy. Yandy didn't react either way. She continued moving forward, posting about growth, healing, and new beginnings. The story that started with whispers had turned into a full-blown saga of love, loss, and consequences. Emotions ran high from start to finish. Fans are shocked by how fast everything unraveled. The family was left divided but also transformed. And while one chapter closed painfully, another quietly began, leaving everyone with the same unanswered question. Was this the end of the drama, or just the calm before another storm? The calm didn't last long. It never does when emotions are still unresolved and too many people feel like they were never fully heard. Just when fans thought the situation had settled into quiet co-parenting and distant healing, a new wave of whispers started moving through inner circles. Someone close to Mendeecees claimed he was spiraling, questioning every decision that led him here. Late-night calls, unanswered texts, moments of regret hitting hardest when the house was quiet and the kids weren't there. Those closest to him said he kept replaying one moment over and over. The night Yandy told him she was choosing peace, he admitted that sentence haunted him more than any argument ever did. Because it meant she wasn't angry anymore. She was finished. Emotions ran high as he confided in a friend, saying he thought freedom would feel lighter, but instead it felt empty. Meanwhile, Yandy was entering a new phase. Not one of revenge, not one of bitterness, but one of clarity. She started turning down interviews, choosing privacy over headlines. People around her noticed how intentional she had become. Every move had purpose now. Every decision centered around stability. Fans began saying she looked like a woman who finally put herself first, and that narrative only grew stronger. Then came the unexpected twist no one saw coming. During a private industry event, Yandy and Tamar crossed paths for the first time since everything exploded. No cameras caught it, no audio leaked, but multiple sources confirmed it happened. The room reportedly went quiet when they noticed each other. Tension filled the air. Emotions ran high without a single word being spoken. According to insiders, Tamar approached Yandy first. Her voice was calm, but her hands were shaking. She told Yandy she never meant to cause pain and that she understood why Yandy felt betrayed. Yandy listened without interrupting. When Tamar finished, Yandy responded quietly, saying, "Intent doesn't erase impact." That line alone summed up everything. No yelling, no drama, just truth. That interaction changed Tamar more than she expected. Friends say she walked away realizing the weight of the situation finally hit her fully. This wasn't just gossip anymore. This was real lives, real families, real consequences. She later admitted to someone close that she wished she had stepped back sooner, before lines blurred beyond repair. Mendeecees heard about the encounter hours later. It shook him, not because of jealousy but because it forced him to face the reality that both women had moved forward in their own ways, while he was still stuck in the middle of his choices. Emotions ran high as he reportedly said, "I lost her because I didn't know when to stop." Another rumor surfaced soon after. Insiders claimed Mendeecees had been seeking therapy, trying to unpack why he sabotaged the one relationship that stood by him through everything. Some fans applauded the effort. Others felt it was too little too late. The comment sections reflected that divide perfectly. The family was left divided in public opinion, even as time moved on. Yandy didn't comment on any of it. Instead, she posted a single photo with a caption that read, "Growth requires honesty." Fans dissected it instantly. Was it about him? About herself? About forgiveness? No one knew for sure, and that mystery kept people locked in. As months passed, the idea of Tamar being the next Mrs. Mendeecees slowly faded, not because fans forgot but because reality settled in. There was no fairy tale ending. No public confirmation. No new romance announcement. Just distance. Tamar shifted her focus back to her own healing and career. Mendeecees focused on rebuilding his relationship with his kids. Yandy focused on herself. But unresolved stories have a way of resurfacing. During a candid moment on a podcast, a mutual acquaintance hinted that there were still secrets the public didn't know. That single comment reignited speculation. Fans are shocked all over again, wondering what else was hidden beneath the surface. Were there conversations never revealed? Decisions made too late? Chances missed? The truth is, not every story ends with closure. Some end with lessons, some end with distance, and some end with silence that says more than any statement ever could. The family was left divided, but also changed forever by what happened. And as the dust finally settled, one thing became clear. This wasn't just a story about separation or rumors. It was about emotional boundaries, unspoken needs, and what happens when people realize too late that love requires more than history. It requires presence. It requires choice. And once those choices are made, there's no going back. Time moved on, but the consequences didn't fade as quickly as people expected. Even months later, Yandy could still feel the aftershocks of everything that happened, not as pain anymore, but as awareness. She became sharper about her boundaries, more selective about who had access to her energy. Friends noticed she laughed more freely now, but she also listened more carefully. Nothing slipped past her anymore. Mendeecees, on the other hand, was learning what solitude really felt like. The quiet nights weren't peaceful. They were loud with thoughts. He found himself replaying conversations, especially the ones where Yandy tried to explain how lonely she felt even while married. Back then, he brushed it off as stress. Now, those words echoed. Emotions ran high every time he dropped the kids off and watched Yandy walk back into the house without him. People close to him said he finally admitted something he'd never said out loud before. He took Yandy's strength for granted. He assumed she would always hold things together, always understand, always forgive. Realizing that assumption cost him everything was a bitter pill to swallow. Fans who once defended him started saying the same thing. Love isn't proven when things are easy, it's proven in restraint. Tamar stayed mostly out of the spotlight during this period. When she did resurface, it was different. Less playful, more guarded. She spoke about healing, about learning to sit with uncomfortable truths. She never mentioned names, but everyone knew what chapter she was referencing. Fans were divided. Some felt she was growing. Others felt she was rewriting history. The family was left divided even in how her silence was interpreted. One night, a rumor surfaced that shook things again. Someone claimed Yandy had officially started dating. Not casually, but intentionally. The blogs jumped on it immediately. Fans are shocked flooded comment sections, demanding to know who he was. Yandy didn't confirm it, but she didn't deny it either. Instead, she posted a photo of herself smiling, captioned, "I deserve joy." That was enough. Mendeecees saw it and felt something snap. Not anger, regret. The finality of it all finally settled in. He reached out one last time, not to ask for another chance, but to apologize properly. The message was long, honest, and stripped of excuses. He acknowledged his emotional betrayal, his selfishness, and the pressure he put on her to be endlessly understanding. Yandy read it, took a deep breath, and responded with grace. She thanked him for the apology, wished him healing, and made it clear that her chapter had turned. That exchange never leaked, but its impact was felt. People close to both of them said it was the first time things felt truly finished. Not messy, not dramatic, just complete. Emotions ran high quietly, without an audience. As the year went on, the narrative around Yandy shifted even more. She became a symbol of choosing self-respect over history. Women resonated with her journey. Fans sent messages saying her strength helped them leave situations where they felt unseen. She didn't capitalize on the drama. She didn't drag anyone. She simply lived. And that, somehow, spoke louder than any interview ever could. Mendeecees continued therapy and focused on being present as a father. He stayed away from public speculation, refusing to comment on rumors about his love life. When asked directly in passing if he regretted how things unfolded, he answered simply, "I regret not listening sooner." That line circulated briefly, then faded, much like the chapter it belonged to. Tamar eventually addressed the situation one final time during a candid moment, saying she learned that emotional connections are not harmless when someone else's heart is involved. That statement earned mixed reactions, but it marked closure for her. She stepped forward, not as a villain or a victim, but as someone who made mistakes and learned from them. The idea of Tamar being the next Mrs. Mendeecees slowly became nothing more than a reminder of how fast narratives can spiral. What once felt like a shocking possibility turned into a lesson about assumptions, proximity, and timing. Fans who once fueled the speculation now reflected on how quickly rumors can turn into pressure that no one is ready for. The family was left divided, but also redefined. Relationships shifted, roles changed, boundaries were respected in ways they never had been before. Holidays looked different, gatherings were smaller, but there was less tension, less pretending, more honesty. In the end, this wasn't just a story about separation. It was about emotional neglect, misplaced comfort, and the cost of assuming love will wait forever. Fans are shocked not because of who ended up with who, but because of how real the fallout felt. Emotions ran high because people saw pieces of their own lives reflected in the chaos. And while the headlines eventually moved on, the lesson stayed. Love demands presence. Loyalty requires intention. And when someone chooses peace, it's usually after they've exhausted every other option. This chapter closed not with scandal, but with growth, leaving behind a truth that lingered long after the noise faded. The story didn't end where most people thought it would. Months after the dust settled, after the blogs slowed down and the comment sections cooled off, a new layer of truth began surfacing in quiet conversations. People close to the situation started realizing that what happened between Yandy and Mendeecees wasn't a sudden collapse. It was a slow erosion. Years of small dismissals, moments where needs went unmet, conversations postponed until they turned into resentment. Yandy began speaking differently in private. Not bitter, not angry, just honest. She admitted she had been carrying the emotional weight of the relationship for a long time. She said there were nights she felt married and alone at the same time. Hearing her say that shifted how some people viewed the entire situation. Emotions ran high when those words quietly made their way into fan spaces because so many people related to that feeling. Mendeecees, still on his own journey, started confronting uncomfortable memories. Therapy forced him to look at patterns he had ignored: the need for validation, the habit of pulling away instead of communicating, the tendency to confuse attention with understanding. He admitted to a close friend that when Tamar listened to him, it felt like relief, not romance at first. But relief can become dangerous when it replaces communication at home. Tamar, reflecting from her own side, acknowledged something similar. She realized she had a pattern of connecting deeply with people during vulnerable moments. She wasn't seeking to take anything from anyone, but she also wasn't setting firm boundaries. That realization was painful. Emotions ran high as she admitted to herself that intentions don't cancel consequences. Another rumor quietly surfaced that changed the tone again. Someone claimed Yandy had been approached for a tell-all interview with a major platform. The offer was big, the exposure was massive, people expected her to finally unload everything. Instead, she declined. That decision shocked fans. Some wanted the tea, others respected the restraint. The family was left divided even in how silence was interpreted. Yandy explained to a friend why she said no. She didn't want her healing to become content. She didn't want her kids to grow up watching their parents' pain turned into entertainment. That choice marked a turning point. It reminded people that not every story needs a final explosive chapter. Meanwhile, Mendeecees faced a different kind of reckoning. Old friends distanced themselves. Opportunities slowed down, not as punishment but as consequence. He admitted feeling invisible in rooms where he once felt supported. Emotions ran high as he realized that reputation isn't just about loyalty in public but integrity in private. The co-parenting dynamic slowly found its rhythm. Drop-offs became easier. Conversations became shorter but more respectful. There were no more emotional outbursts. No more late-night arguments. Just logistics and mutual concern for the kids. People around them noticed the maturity, even if it came through pain. Fans began shifting their language too. Instead of asking who was wrong, many started asking what could be learned. Discussions turned reflective. Some admitted they had projected their own experiences onto the situation. Others acknowledged how quickly they chose sides without full context. Fans are shocked turned into fans self-aware. Tamar eventually re-entered the public eye more fully. When asked indirectly about lessons learned, she said something that resonated deeply. She said emotional access is a privilege, not a right. And when that access belongs to someone else, it has to be respected. That line circulated quietly, but its impact was strong. Mendeecees heard it too. It forced another layer of accountability. He admitted to himself that he allowed someone else into spaces that should have been reserved for his wife. Even without physical betrayal, the emotional shift mattered. Emotions ran high as he recognized that loyalty isn't just about what you don't do, but what you choose to protect. Yandy, continuing to move forward, leaned into her own growth. She explored new interests, traveled more, reconnected with parts of herself she had neglected. People said she looked lighter, not because life was easier, but because she was no longer carrying what wasn't hers to fix. A quiet moment between Yandy and a close confidant revealed something powerful. She said she didn't regret loving deeply. She regretted staying silent about her needs. That admission reframed everything. It wasn't about blaming Mendeecees entirely. It was about acknowledging her own boundaries had been crossed, partly because she hadn't enforced them sooner. As time went on, the narrative of Tamar being the next Mrs. Mendeecees completely dissolved, not in scandal but in reality. There was no relationship to celebrate, no announcement to make, just two people who shared a connection at the wrong time and paid the price for it. The family was left divided but also more honest. Relationships that survived did so because they adapted. Those that didn't faded quietly. Holidays were different but calmer. Fewer forced smiles, more genuine moments. Fans slowly stopped waiting for another bombshell. The story no longer felt like a cliffhanger. It felt like a lesson unfolding in real time. Emotions ran high not because of drama but because of recognition. People saw themselves in the missteps, the silence, the delayed realizations. In the end, this chapter didn't close with a wedding or a feud. It closed with accountability, growth, and acceptance. Yandy chose peace. Mendeecees chose reflection. Tamar chose awareness. And the audience was left with a truth that lingered quietly after the noise. Sometimes the most dramatic endings aren't loud at all. Sometimes they're the moments when people finally understand what went wrong, why it mattered, and why it can't be undone. And that understanding, more than any rumor or headline, is what truly changes everything. The aftermath lingered in ways no headline could capture. Even when the world stopped watching so closely, the emotional residue stayed. Yandy noticed it in small moments, like when she reached for her phone out of habit to share good news and then remembered she no longer had to explain herself to anyone. There was freedom in that realization, but also grief. Emotions ran high in quiet spaces where no one could see her strength. Mendeecees continued navigating life in a slower, heavier way. Friends said he seemed more present but also more subdued. He listened more than he spoke. When people tried to joke about the rumors that once followed him everywhere, he shut it down. He didn't want jokes. He wanted understanding, even if it came too late. He admitted to someone close that he had confused survival with happiness for a long time, and by the time he realized the difference, the damage was already done. The kids adjusted in their own ways. Some days were easier than others. Yandy worked hard to keep their world stable, reminding them constantly that love didn't disappear just because the house dynamics changed. That effort didn't go unnoticed. People around her said she handled motherhood with even more intention than before, determined not to let adult mistakes spill into their innocence. Tamar, watching everything unfold from a distance now, felt the weight of being part of a story she never planned to headline. She admitted privately that being labeled, judged, and discussed stripped something from her. It forced her to confront how easily emotional proximity can be misread, especially when boundaries aren't crystal clear. Emotions ran high as she acknowledged that healing sometimes means accepting responsibility without needing public forgiveness. There were moments when all three paths nearly crossed again, at industry events, mutual gatherings, places where history tends to resurface. But distance remained. Intentional distance. No scenes, no confrontations, just unspoken acknowledgement that some chapters are better left closed. Fans, however, weren't ready to let go so easily. Comment sections still buzzed with theories. Some insisted reconciliation was inevitable. Others speculated about new romances. Every smile, every absence, every vague caption was analyzed. Fans are shocked became a recurring phrase anytime something looked slightly different than before. But slowly, even that curiosity began to fade. Yandy noticed the shift. Fewer questions, less pressure, more space to just exist. She leaned into that space, building a version of life that felt aligned instead of performative. She stopped explaining her choices. She stopped justifying her boundaries. She trusted that the people meant to understand would, and those who didn't need access anyway. Mendeecees, still on his internal journey, had to face another difficult truth. Forgiveness doesn't always come with reunion. He learned that accountability is valuable even when it doesn't lead to reconciliation. Emotions ran high as he accepted that the role he played in Yandy's life had changed permanently, and no amount of regret could rewind time. Tamar reached a similar realization. She understood that stepping back wasn't a loss but a correction. She focused on rebuilding trust with herself, questioning why she felt drawn to emotionally unavailable spaces. That self-reflection wasn't glamorous, but it was necessary. Growth rarely is. The family was left divided in a way that felt quieter now. Not loud disagreements, but subtle shifts. Who showed up? Who didn't? Who stayed neutral? Who chose sides? Over time, the tension softened. Not everyone reconciled, but there was acceptance. And sometimes, acceptance is the closest thing to peace people get. One moment stood out as symbolic to those watching closely. Yandy attended a celebration surrounded by laughter, friends, and genuine joy. No drama, no explanation, just presence. Someone captured a candid photo of her mid-laugh, and it spread online. Fans commented that she looked lighter than ever. That image said more than any statement she could have made. Mendeecees saw it too. Instead of pain, he felt clarity. He finally understood that loving someone also means knowing when to let them thrive without you. That realization didn't erase regret, but it softened it. Emotions ran high, but they no longer controlled him. As for the question that once dominated everything, whether Tamar would be the next Mrs. Mendeecees, it faded into irrelevance. Real life didn't support the fantasy. What remained was a lesson about assumptions, about how quickly narratives can grow bigger than reality, and how damaging that can be for everyone involved. With time, the story transformed from scandal to study. People didn't just watch it for entertainment anymore. They reflected on it. Discussions shifted toward emotional availability, communication, and the dangers of seeking understanding outside the spaces where it belongs. Fans are shocked turned into fans thoughtful. Yandy never reclaimed the spotlight to tell her side in detail. She didn't need to. Her life spoke for her. Peace became her loudest statement. Boundaries became her strongest defense. And self-respect became the legacy she modeled. Mendeecees continued rebuilding, not publicly, but personally. He learned that growth doesn't require applause. It requires honesty, even when no one is watching. Tamar moved forward with a deeper awareness of her impact, choosing caution where she once chose comfort. In the end, this wasn't a fairy tale or a villain story. It was a human one. Messy, emotional, unresolved in some places, complete in others. Emotions ran high because real feelings were involved. The family was left divided because real choices were made. And as the noise finally faded, what remained was a quiet truth. Love isn't just about staying. It's about showing up fully, protecting emotional space, and recognizing when holding on costs more than letting go. This story didn't end with a shock. It ended with understanding. And sometimes, that's the most powerful ending of all. Even after everything, there were moments when the past tried to resurface. Memories have a way of doing that when people least expect it. Yandy would sometimes hear a song that reminded her of an early moment in their relationship, before pressure, before expectations, before the world had an opinion. In those moments, she allowed herself to feel it without guilt. She understood now that healing didn't mean erasing history. It meant not living inside it. Mendeecees had his own reminders. Certain places he avoided, certain conversations he couldn't finish. He admitted to a friend that the hardest part wasn't losing the marriage, but realizing how much of himself he had withheld while being loved so fiercely. That realization came with shame and clarity at the same time. Emotions ran high when he acknowledged that love without emotional presence isn't love at all. It's habit. Co-parenting continued to evolve. There were moments of tension, but fewer misunderstandings. Both learned how to communicate without reopening wounds. The kids adjusted more than anyone expected. Their resilience became a quiet motivator for both parents to do better. Yandy often said the children were the reason she chose peace instead of chaos. She didn't want them growing up thinking love was supposed to hurt. Tamar, reflecting on everything from a distance, found herself changing how she interacted with people altogether. She became more intentional about boundaries, especially emotional ones. Friends noticed she no longer played the role of emotional safe space for people who hadn't earned that access. It wasn't bitterness, it was awareness. Emotions ran high when she admitted that being understanding doesn't mean being available at any cost. There was a moment when all three names trended again, briefly, sparked by nothing more than an old clip resurfacing. Fans reacted instantly, dissecting expressions and tones like the past was happening in real time. But the difference now was how little it mattered to the people actually involved. The noise existed, but it no longer dictated their actions. Yandy continued building a life that felt intentional. She surrounded herself with people who poured back into her. She said no without explanation. She rested without apology. Those around her noticed a quiet confidence that hadn't been there before. Not the kind that seeks validation, but the kind that knows its worth without asking. Mendeecees, watching from his own lane, accepted that some losses are permanent. He stopped looking for ways to reframe the past and focused on showing up differently in the present. He took accountability where it was due, even when no one asked him to. Emotions ran high in private moments where he had to sit with the truth that some apologies arrive after the door has already closed. Tamar found peace in stepping out of narratives that weren't hers to carry anymore. She stopped responding to speculation. She stopped explaining herself to people committed to misunderstanding her. Instead, she focused on growth that didn't need an audience. That choice, though quiet, was transformative. Over time, the story lost its edge. Not because it was forgotten, but because it no longer needed to be fueled. Fans moved on to new drama, new headlines, new speculation. But for those who followed closely, this one stayed different. It felt personal. It felt familiar. It felt like a mirror. The family was left divided in the sense that nothing went back to the way it was. But that division wasn't destructive anymore. It was simply reality. People adjusted, expectations shifted, relationships found new shapes. Some faded, some strengthened, all change. Yandy once shared something privately that summed it all up. She said the hardest lesson was learning that loyalty without reciprocity turns into self-betrayal. That sentence resonated deeply with those who heard it. Emotions ran high because it spoke to so many unspoken experiences. Mendeecees learned that freedom without responsibility feels hollow. Tamar learned that connection without boundaries can be harmful. And Yandy learned that choosing herself didn't make her selfish. It made her whole. The rumors, the speculation, the question of who would end up with who all faded into the background where they belonged. What remained was growth. Uncomfortable, quiet, necessary growth. Fans are shocked at how a story that started with gossip ended with reflection. This wasn't a win or a loss. It was a reckoning. A reminder that emotional neglect leaves scars just as real as betrayal. That listening matters before attention is sought elsewhere. That love requires active presence, not just history. And as time continued moving forward, one truth stayed constant. None of them were the same people they were before. And maybe that was the real ending. Not scandal, not headlines, but transformation that didn't ask to be understood by everyone, only honored by those who lived it. Even with all the growth and distance, the past still had a way of knocking when least expected. One afternoon, Yandy received a call from someone she hadn't spoken to since the earliest days of her marriage. The voice on the other end asked gently how she was really doing. Yandy paused before answering, realizing that for the first time, she could say the truth without feeling like she had to defend it. She said she was healing, not healed, but finally honest with herself. Emotions ran high in that quiet admission. That conversation stirred something deeper. It reminded her how often she used to minimize her own needs to keep peace. How she learned to be strong so others wouldn't fall apart. She acknowledged that strength had a cost. It kept her going, but it also kept her silent. Understanding that balance became part of her healing. Strength without voice, she realized, becomes a cage. Mendeecees was having similar realizations in his own way. During a therapy session, he admitted that he never learned how to sit with discomfort. When things got heavy, he looked for relief instead of resolution. That habit followed him into adulthood, into marriage, into choices he now had to live with. Emotions ran high as he finally understood that avoidance doesn't prevent pain, it delays it. He began having difficult conversations with people he once avoided, not to explain himself but to listen. Some forgave him, others didn't. Both outcomes forced growth. He learned that accountability isn't about controlling how people respond. It's about owning your role regardless of the outcome. Tamar, reflecting on her own patterns, found herself revisiting past relationships and friendships. She noticed a recurring theme of being the listener, the comforter, the emotional anchor. She realized how that role blurred lines and created expectations she never intended. Emotions ran high when she admitted that being needed had sometimes felt like being valued. Learning the difference became part of her journey. As time passed, the public curiosity around the situation continued to fade. Not because it was resolved in a dramatic way, but because life moved on. New stories replaced old ones. New scandals demanded attention, but for those involved, the lessons stayed close. Yandy found herself mentoring women quietly, not on stages or in interviews but in private conversations. She encouraged them to speak up earlier, to name discomfort before it turned into resentment, to understand that love should feel supportive, not draining. Fans who crossed paths with her often said she radiated peace, not perfection. That authenticity resonated more than any curated image ever could. Mendeecees focused on rebuilding trust in small, consistent ways. Showing up on time, listening without defensiveness, following through. He learned that trust isn't rebuilt through grand gestures but through reliability. Emotions ran high as he accepted that some trust may never be restored, and that was something he had to respect. Tamar stepped into a quieter phase of life, one centered around self-awareness rather than explanation. She stopped engaging with narratives that reduced her to a single chapter. She understood now that clarity doesn't require consensus. Sometimes it just requires honesty with yourself. There were moments when all three felt the weight of what could have been. Not in regret alone, but in curiosity. How different things might have looked if conversations happened sooner. If feelings were named before they wandered. If listening replaced defensiveness. But those thoughts no longer controlled them. They were reflections, not anchors. The family was left divided in the sense that nothing returned to its original shape. But something healthier replaced it. Honesty replaced pretending. Boundaries replaced expectations. Communication replaced silence. Even when relationships didn't survive, respect did. Fans who once watched for drama now spoke about lessons. Comment sections shifted from accusations to reflections. People shared their own stories of emotional neglect, unmet needs, and the courage it took to choose themselves. Fans are shocked became fans awakened. Yandy once said privately that she didn't leave because she stopped loving. She left because she stopped feeling safe being vulnerable. That distinction mattered. It reframed the entire story. Love without safety, she realized, isn't sustainable. Mendeecees learned that being loved deeply doesn't absolve you from showing up fully. Tamar learned that empathy without boundaries can still cause harm. And Yandy learned that choosing peace doesn't mean choosing loneliness. It means choosing alignment. As the years continued, this chapter became a quiet reference point rather than an open wound. Something that shaped them, not defined them. The noise faded, the lessons remained. And in the end, what lingered wasn't the rumor of who would be with who, or the shock of how things ended. What lingered was the understanding that emotional presence matters. That communication can't be postponed forever. That love requires participation, not assumption. This story didn't end with applause or outrage. It ended with awareness. And sometimes, awareness is the most powerful resolution of all. And now it's your turn. After everything you just heard, after every twist, every emotional confession, every choice that changed lives forever, the biggest questions are still hanging in the air. Did Yandy do the right thing by choosing peace over history? Did Mendeecees realize the cost of emotional betrayal too late? And was Tamar simply caught in the middle, or did she cross a line that can never be uncrossed? Fans are shocked, emotions are still running high, and the family was left divided in ways that may never fully heal. But what do you think really happened behind closed doors? Was this separation inevitable, or could one honest conversation earlier have changed everything? Do you believe emotional betrayal is just as damaging as physical betrayal, or is there still a difference? And most importantly, who do you think truly grew the most from this situation? Drop your thoughts in the comments right now, because this conversation is far from over. If you saw yourself in any part of this story, you're not alone, and your voice matters here. Read the comments, respond to others, and let's talk about the real lessons behind the drama. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the mess, the emotions, and the unanswered questions, make sure you hit that like button to let us know. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another story that everyone will be talking about. We bring you the drama, the twists, and the conversations you won't find anywhere else. And remember, sometimes the loudest endings aren't scandals, they're realizations. Stay tuned, because the next story might be even crazier than this one is.